Hi, I'm Tim from the Marathon Mates. On this episode of the Flying Runner, we're bringing you the ultimate Tokyo Marathon guide straight from the experts. Our four incredible runners who have all conquered the 6 World Marathon Majors are here to discuss everything about the Tokyo Marathon, from navigating race logistics and the start line strategy to surviving that last out and back, which does seem to go on forever. We've got everything you need to know. Are you ready to run? Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying Runner, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hi everyone, I'm Tim from the Marathon Mates and welcome to episode number 86. 86, yep, number 86 of the Flying Runr Podcast. With the Tokyo Marathon just over a week away, runners around the world are now starting to face fears and anxiety mixed with excitement. So stay tuned on to this episode as we share some of our experience and tips to help you prepare for this amazing race. But first, before we do any of that, let me introduce my fellow ghosts, as Tony says on the run sheet. Our fellow 6-star medalists, Tony, Lucia, and my good nurse, Tara. Guys, how are you all?
Hello, all. Very well. Very well.
How are
indeed.
we? How are you, Tim?
I'm good. The arm's starting to come a bit better. The ribs are starting to feel a bit better. Still in pain, but no sling tonight. So I'm getting a bit more movement. I think about 90% movement back into the arm, but about 60% functionality. That's been able to turn door handles and lift things. And the ribs are still sore. Don't make me laugh too much, but they're improving. So still no running, but yeah, it is what it is. How about you guys? How are you, Lucia?
I'm doing well. So, I had a good weekend of training because I went to my run club on Saturday, which sometimes I don't get to go. So I'm using those ones as more of a tempo. So running faster down to the Opera House, like to work on my speed for Goldie half. And yeah, had a nice longer one yesterday, so 12 Ks, building the distance because I've now officially started week 1 of GC training. We're out of the
Yay! Good for you. Yay, you've only been training for the last 2 weeks, just don't realise it.
Had to get it in there.
Well done, Luch. Well done. Mind you, I am going to, pre-week is usually just 1 week. I think when you drag it on into a 3-week pre-week, I think Tim might be right. That's procrastination.
Yep.
No, I was building the base.
Then that's training. That's part of your training plan then.
I reckon
Anyway.
this conversation could be a whole separate episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be. Maybe we do the science of pre-weeks and whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
We will dispel the myths of pre-week.
No myths
Tony, how's
about
your
it.
week?
Yeah,
How's
actually,
your
I had a really good week. Had a good tempo run again midweek. Overall, I think I ran 47 kilometers for the week, which about 8 kilometers past what the target is at the moment. So I'm feeling pretty good. However, I must admit, ran 15 on Saturday, and I've got some apologies to make because I went through 2 shirts because, as you know, we do a compass run, and I normally keep on these hot and humid days, I normally keep a spare shirt in the car when I come through for some nutrition and drinks. And for the first time ever, I took my shirt off to run. It was that hot and I was that wet. So for anyone that was running around Cleveland on Saturday, I sincerely apologize. However, I must say running without a shirt is quite liberating, and it actually helped my form because I'm sucking the tummy in, I'm sticking the shoulders out. So for me, it was probably a good thing, but for anyone else that was watching, I sincerely do apologize. But it really knocked me around, to be honest. I did 5K with Sunday with Sharon. But the weekend, like the heat just killed me this weekend, and I was really, really drained and very lethargic. But I picked up a little bit when we had our marathon mates lunch on Sunday, and a big shout out to all our marathon mates, of course. But yeah, just really, and even today, just really not back into it. Monday is always a rest day for us, so I'm really hoping I'm got a bit of spring in my step come tomorrow because the heat just has knocked me around. So, but yeah, good week of training, except for that.
That's good. 47 Ks is good. That's getting you up there where you need to be. So, well done. Maybe that's the benefit of your pre-week, hey?
Absolutely. Well, the funny thing is, right? So when I was doing my stages of the marathon, week 1 is launch week. Week 2 and 3 are honeymoon weeks because you're supposed to be on top of the world. My week 2 was atrocious. And so weeks 3 and 4 have been my honeymoon weeks. So I've really got to rethink what these weeks are going to be called from now on because I'm a little bit out of whack. But anyway, I'm having some fun with it. So
That's it. And Tara, how's your week been? Apart from
Yeah.
nursing me.
Apart from nursing you, so that's been interesting. But that's the nice way to put it. No, you're actually not too bad. You're not too bad, actually. So I've managed to get in a couple of Pilates or strength sessions while I've been with Tim, which has been good. And I did some treadmill runs as well. So on one of the days, I just did a tempo run of just 7 Ks on the treadmill. And then I managed to do a 6K run on the treadmill, but I just brought it up in speed. So I did like 5 minutes at 10 Ks, 5 minutes at 11 Ks, 5 minutes at 12 Ks, 5 minutes at 13 Ks, 5 minutes at 14 Ks. And I was going to go up to 5 minutes at 15 Ks, but my body said, no, don't do that. So I brought it back down to 5 minutes at 12 Ks. So for 30 minutes or just over, I managed 6 Ks doing that. I did park walking at Bunyaville while Tim did marshalling. And Sunday I actually went out. I got a new hydration vest, which I'm so impressed with. Like I am absolutely so impressed with. So I really wanted to test it out. So I walked out 4 Ks with Tim. And I just said to Tim, I'm going to just take off and do my own thing, 1 K out, 1 K back to you. And it ended up being 4 Ks of running that I did, and I did at a consistent speed of 6-minute pace. But it was so hot out there at Sandgate. But running with my new pack, didn't bounce, didn't move. I was very impressed. So yeah, so I ended up with 10 Ks all up yesterday, which very short run for me, but I was happy with it. So yeah.
Yep. And I was the same. I did 8 kilometers in my entire week, and that was yesterday. 4 out, 4 back with crook ribs and a crook arm, and felt really good, but at the same time itching to start running when I see all our mates out there running away. But just got to give it a break for a little bit longer. So anyway, thanks for that, guys. Now, before we go to the news, the Sunshine Coast Marathon today has announced that it has got a new single loop course for the marathon, which is huge news. The Sunshine Coast Marathon is where the Brisbane Olympic Marathon is going to be held, in that same area. So they're juggling around with the courses, trying them out a little bit. The new course itself now starts at Alexander Heads, where it did in the past. It will head south down to Mooloolaba, do the usual dogleg down through Mooloolaba that it's always done, head up towards the Maroochydore River, and instead of then turning around and doing multiple laps, the course will now take you over the Maroochydore River and up to Twin Waters and Majimba, and run around that area before coming back. It looks like a pretty nice looking course. It's a flat course apart from the bridge over the river. So it will remove the hills that you go up at the start of every loop there. But what are your thoughts on it, guys? I think it's actually a great looking course. It'd be a good marathon to run one day. Is it an Olympic type course? I'm not sure. I don't think it really shows off the best of everything. It shows off some nice areas of suburbia, but there's a lot of dead spaces on that course where you're not going to get a lot of crowd, I think, in the Olympics. But anyway, I think it's a start and they'll keep refining it. But what do you guys think?
Okay, the big thing for me is, the Sunshine Coast Motorway is interesting. I think that's going to be one of those dead things that you talk about. It might be very quiet along there, I would imagine. But I think generally, I think the course is going to be a pretty good one to run. I won't be running it this year, so I'll wait to hear the verdict from the runners. But, I mentioned today that every time I see one of those animated marathon loop maps that you see on social media, my first thought is always, my God, that's a long way. And every time I think, how the hell do I run that? So, but anyway, yeah, I think it's going to be cool. So, Luch?
I think anything which takes out loops is great because I'm not a fan of doing loops. So yeah, I've never done Sunshine Coast, but from what you guys have said, it's good changes. So I'm going with that.
Tara?
Yeah, look, I'm actually excited to see what it will be like. I've done the Sunshine Coast Marathon, I think 3 or 4 times now on the loopy course, and I twice. Was it only twice? Oh,
Only
really?
twice.
Oh, okay. I actually really don't mind that because you do the half marathon and then 2 10K loops or 10.5K loops. So it's not actually that bad. You have a lot of friends that are there with you, supporting you, and you have people that can support you for the one of the 10K loops, or if I've done the half marathon or whatever. So it's still my PB course, and I actually really enjoy Sunny Coast. So it will be interesting to actually see what the new course is like. I won't run it this year because I've already signed up for the half, but I will be probably contemplating it maybe next year, just to see what it's like. But apart from the hill going up over the bridge, it looks a lot flatter than the current course as well. So yeah, should be interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. The other thing to note is there is a change in the start time. So in the past, the marathon and the half marathon have started at the same time. For some reason, I'm not sure why, they've decided this year they're going to separate the marathon and the half marathon from starting. And the new start time for the half marathon is 7:15 in the morning. For most of our listeners overseas and interstate, they probably say that's a reasonable time. But in Queensland, 7:15 for a half marathon means you're finishing in 9:30, 9:45 for a lot of the back of the packers, which is getting late in Queensland, particularly in the heat. We've run Sunshine Coast a number of times in the past, and we've seen a lot of hot days there. We've seen a lot of runners collapse with the heat, and we're also aware this year they are bringing it forward a week or two as well from where it traditionally is. So it'll be another change, but an interesting change to see how it all goes and how everyone copes if it is a hot day. Alrighty, so that's that now, guys. So now it's that time of the week where we want to talk about the news. This week, Tony is going to step up and give us the news. What's been happening, Tony?
Absolutely. Big shoes to fill. I've got the news, and I've really focused on records because it seems that a day doesn't go by at the moment in 2025 where we're not talking about a new record, and overnight we're talking about another new record. So it's a new world record for the half marathon, and this was set by Jacob Kiplimo from Uganda, and the Barcelona half marathon. So just last week, Lucia was talking about the new world's fastest half marathon in Japan. But now the Barcelona half marathon is now the official, the unofficial, yet to be verified, but world record for the half for men in a time of 56 minutes and 40 seconds, an average pace per kilometre of 2 minutes, 2:41. That's just, I cannot fathom that. And you double that, and that's well under the 2 hour time. And I know, Tim, you're so excited to see Jacob run the London Marathon. So it's going to be so interesting, this London Marathon, as we get closer.
Yeah, he's stepping up for the first time ever to run the marathon distance. So Jacob has held the half marathon world record on 3 different occasions in the past. He's only 24. He's a young bloke. He's stepping up in London to the marathon distance. So obviously, you don't run that pace 2:41. I shouldn't say obviously. You shouldn't run 2:41 the whole way, but you never know these days with the way these guys run and their mindsets on it. But we all know London's a good course. It's got a fairly flat course. There's no massive hills. There's a nice downhill section there at around 5Ks. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes on that course, his first marathon, whether he's going to go and have a crack at maybe a world record or not. We'll just wait and see. It's going to be interesting.
Very much so.
He set the world record as well for the 15K race, road race as well, and absolutely smashed the 15K road race world record in the half marathon. He also won, I think it was by about 2 minutes that he beat second place.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. So.
Which at that pace is about the equivalent of 800 meters.
In other record-breaking news, Jakob Ingebrigtsen had broke the indoor mile and the 1,500-meter world record in the same race. And this was just 5 days after Yared Nuguse set the world record of 3:46.63 at the Melrose Games in New York. Jakob then came out and killed that in 3:45.14 in France. So he broke the 1,500-meter record and the mile record indoors at the same event. He clocked 3:29 for the 1,500. And this year is just that middle distance rivalry. We've got Josh Kerr, we've got the gold medalist from last year, Cole Hocker, we've got Nuguse as well now in the mix. And of course, we got Jakob Ingebrigtsen. And this is playing out all the way through to the world champs in Tokyo in September. So just incredible in my eyes. I'm going to talk very quickly about 2 Australians that are really making a difference. We've got Cam Myers. He's 18-year-old. He just produced a short track Aussie record, finishing 3rd in the 3,000 meters at the New Balance Indoor Grand Prix in Boston with a time of 7:33.12, which broke Craig Mottram's national record, which was set in 2008, which was a time of 7:34.50. So over a minute he beat it by, and that comes 8 days after Myers smashed the world under 20 mile indoor record in his first indoor race with a 3:53 in New York. So he's going to be phenomenal if he continues and maintains the form that he's showing as a youngster. And we can't go past Guat or Gout, however people want to say that. He just can't stop. 17-year-old. He's got the world talking again. And there's a bit of a thing with this one. Every year, apparently, according to his coach, Guat likes to run a 400-meter time trial just to see how his speed endurance is. So let me tell you how that went. Guat clocked 46.2 seconds, which was nearly a full second quicker than Noah Lyles' best at that particular time. So Noah Lyles is the Olympic champ. So 47.04 was the best that Lyle had done in 2016. And it's the time that Guat was the fastest under 18 time by an Australian for 35 years. Not bad for a time trial. Tim, how good is Australian athletics looking?
Awesome. It's awesome to see Gout running faster than Noah Lyles did. Okay, Noah Lyles is a specialist in the 100, 200. He's not a 400 runner. But they do like to run the 400s, the sprinters, for an endurance check, I guess. And if you think back, even Usain Bolt used to be pretty handy over the 400 meters. You remember in 400 meters is considered a sprint at Olympic distance. So yeah, it's interesting what the future is for Gout. But at the same time, Cameron Myers, well done. You know, a new world under 20 world record. He's got great potential. I just hope that he can maintain that. Obviously, as he gets stronger and older and a bit more wiser and a bit more seasoned around the world, we'll really know what his potential's like then. But, you know, he's 18 years old and he's the under 20 world record holder in the indoor mile.
Unreal.
That's pretty good.
And for the last piece of news, and this grabbed headlines all around the world and stopped runners in their tracks when they heard this, but Daniel Fairbrother from Stevenage in Hertfordshire in the UK. You may remember Daniel. He ran a previous marathon, the Stevenage Marathon, in a pair of Crocs. You may have heard. He's going to go one better, and he's running the marathon or a marathon. I think it's the London Marathon he's running in a pair of sliders. So I'm not quite sure. Do Crocs have like the heel support at the back? Sliders don't. I'm really intrigued to see how he does that. Last year, he raised £12,000 for Diabetes UK, and once again, he's raising funds. So, Daniel, awesome stuff. People around the world are talking about you because you're going to run a marathon in a pair of sliders. And Tim, that's the news.
Good luck to Daniel Fairbrother. Good luck to him on his long-term foot and leg and hip and back health and well-being. Not for me, I must admit. But thanks for that, Tony, and thanks for the news tonight. So now we're going to share our experiences regarding the Tokyo Marathon. All four of us have run it. All four of us have got memories, good and bad, of that event. And so tonight we're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about what we love about it, what we don't love about it. But it is in its own right certainly one of the cleanest marathons that we've run. It's not the noisiest crowds, but the organisation is definitely one of the best. And it is a little bit quirky. It is a little bit different. The Japanese are very compliant in how they operate. They like to have rules. They operate by a set system. And the expectation is that everyone must follow it, which also causes a lot of concern to people who aren't used to that. And there's a lot of things, particularly around language barriers, particularly around those rules and those requirements and those cultural things that you should do. So I'm going to start. We're going to have a general conversation with it, I guess. And maybe I might just open it up firstly for each of us. If we just for 1 minute each, just give a very quick overview. When did you run it? When did you run Tokyo? And what was your overall experience, good, bad, or ugly, or whatever? So I'll start with you, Lucia. When did you run it, and your sort of thoughts or your initial overview of the whole thing?
I ran it in 2023 with you guys, so I was quite lucky. I got my entry through one of their virtual runs. So people, sorry, and for our listeners, if you see those virtual runs, give it a crack because people actually win. It wasn't my favorite, reason being because I was really worried about the cutoffs. Because as most of our listeners know, I'm your back of the pack runner. My average marathon is 6 hours. So I was really concerned about making the cutoffs because Tokyo has very strict cutoffs along various points along the course. But I can't fault the people were friendly, super clean race. And I loved Tokyo as a city, but not my favorite race because to me, it didn't have anything spectacular as a standout point. And we'll get to the Expo in a bit, but the Expo was interesting. Yeah, so not in my top three.
Okay. Tony?
I've got to say, I think fondly back to Tokyo. I think the roads are probably the smoothest I've ever run on in any of the majors. The crowds were quiet. Organisation was good. There was some stress and anxiety, but once again, we'd sort of prepped for that, so we knew what to expect. We ran it in 24, the year after you guys, so we benefited from both Lucia and Team Ellis's experiences in relation to things like the cutoffs and whatnot. So, yeah, I've got really fond memories of Tokyo. I mean, it was a challenging race for Sharon, but to me, I think it was just an awesome race. Probably a little less excited when we got our 6-star at the end of it, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. By the time we got to the tent, there was lots and lots of people that had gone before us, so I can just imagine the people had probably had their excitement all squeezed out of them. But no, I've got fond memories of Tokyo.
Yep. And Tara?
I actually really enjoyed Tokyo. As many of our listeners all know, Tim and I and Tony was one of these people as well, Tony and Sharon. We tried for Tokyo 2020 and it got cancelled a week beforehand. So we had already been to Tokyo and just did a holiday, and Tony and Sharon did the same thing in 2020. So we actually got a good feel of what Tokyo was going to be like, or the Japanese culture was going to be like beforehand. But the marathon itself, yes, there is a lot of switchbacks in it, but you get to see people each time that you see, as you do those switchbacks. You also have, as Tony said, really, really smooth roads. And it's quiet. Sometimes, like, I love New York. It was a fantastic marathon, but there was times there where I'm just like, can everyone just shut up? I need to get back into my own space. Whereas at least with Tokyo, I could do that. The only thing was probably for me with Tokyo, the toilet situation was probably not ideal, but I did negative split that marathon. So, yeah, for me, it was a good one.
Yep, and I'm the same. I have the same memories as Tara. So I guess one of the things that most people are always a bit concerned about is traveling to a country which is foreign. It's obviously a little bit different than America or Australia or the UK or any of those sort of white Anglo sort of countries. There's also some issues around or concerns that may have around culture, food, traveling. What were your experiences, I guess, first before you went there, but secondly, getting around Tokyo, the language barriers, the customs, the cultures? Generally, how was your thoughts on that? Because I know, firstly, before people go to Tokyo, that's one of their biggest concerns. How do I get from the airport to the hotel? How do I get around the city from my hotel? How do I make sure I'm eating the right food and I'm not going to eat something that is nasty and horrible?
I loved
Any
it.
thoughts on that? Yep.
I was quite lucky because you guys were kind of my unofficial guides as such, and it worked out that we were on the same flights both ways. So that made it really easy for me. So I'm always grateful to you guys for that. The food, you can't go past the convenience stores. That's where I ate the bulk of my food. The sandwiches from 7-Eleven were great. And I think sometimes what people tend to forget or maybe not necessarily realize is a lot of the restaurants, especially in the main areas, some of them do have English menus. So I was very conscious of looking for an English menu. And there's nothing that Google can't solve, because I remember I was looking for a banana a few days before the race because I'm like, I've got to have a banana before the race. Didn't know how to say banana in the language, but I got a picture up on Google and I pointed to the picture, and it's amazing. Like the universal symbol for yes and no, it worked. I got my banana in the end. So I personally didn't have an issue with any of the language because you can get by. Like it's just the simple words. I love it.
Yeah, I think Tim was right, but it is something that makes people a bit anxious. And I was a little nervous more about, I guess, getting around Tokyo and the language. But, once you've worked it out, the transportation there in trains and whatever was just first class. They were just spot on. It was so easy to navigate once you'd worked it out, and it just took you a little bit of time and a little bit of prep to get through that. I didn't have an issue with the language. I do not know one. I probably know 2 words, of Japanese, and the people there were just, the Japanese people are just so polite, obliging, and they would work so hard with me or with Sharon to help us get to or understand and comprehend. So, yeah, if people out there do have a fear around those things, I mean, there's Google Translate that people can use, but truly it was a magical experience, and I'm sure that resonates with yourself as well, Tara.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, food-wise, we weren't concerned at all. The night before the marathon, Lucia had actually found us a nice little pizza place, and we went and had just pizza. So that, I mean, it's not like you can't find Western food that you're used to eating there. It's very easy to do. Transportation is amazing. Like, there's a train every 2 minutes, and that's being very conservative. Like, it's probably more close to 1.5 minutes. They're very, very fast. They're very convenient. They drop you off where you need to go. And it's a very walkable and safe city. So you can be walking around at 10 o'clock at night through the train stations or 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's very, very safe. There is no concerns for your safety. Even as a female who was walking around by herself, you would have no concerns. So Tokyo, to me, is really good. 95% of the people, I think, would probably speak basic English. So you are very, very well adjusted there. So even if the person that you're speaking to doesn't speak English, somebody around them will. So it's quite easy. And as Tony said, they're very, very welcoming people who want to actually help you out as much as they can as well. So, but public transport's great. Food is great. Google Translate, as Tony and Lucia were saying, is really, really good. I did go into a Japanese restaurant that had only a Japanese menu and put Google Translate up because I'm like, oh, I'd like to try that. Put it up on it and it was horse. So I actually decided not to eat the horse and went for something that said chicken with Google Translate. But it's not that hard to do. And look, I was just being adventurous. I just wanted to try and find the most Japanese authentic thing I could find. But horse was probably out of my league for that one.
Yeah, it's I guess the fear is it's the most populous city in the world, Tokyo. There's 36 million people that live within the greater Tokyo area. It's a very busy city. It's a 24-hour city. There's a lot of hustle and bustle, but it's actually safe. You don't feel like you're getting ripped off anywhere. You don't have people hassling you and pulling you up on every corner to try and scam some money out of you. And it's a really, really comfortable city to get around. There is a lot of English words up on buildings. All the train stations have English everywhere. And once, as you say, Tony, once you work out the system on how to catch trains, how to move around, how to talk to people, it's very easy. So on that, I guess the first thing we always talk about, we have talked about in the past the history of the marathon on previous Tokyo Marathon shows that we've done. I won't talk about that too much other than it's been a major since I think around about 2013. But prior to that, it was two different marathons, the Tokyo Marathon and another marathon, Tokyo City Marathon. They've merged them into one. But there's been a history there of marathons since the 1980s. The Japanese themselves are a big running culture. They have running everywhere in their lives, whether it's through school, whether it's through work, whether it's through university. Their running clubs are huge, and it is their sort of national sport of running. So they're very informed around marathons. You feel the hype when you land in the city. You see the banners up around the place saying Tokyo Marathon. You see it on the trains in the advertising. And so it is a city that is very much in love with the marathon. Now, the next bit we always talk about is around the Expo. So I'm going to start with you, Lucia. Your thoughts on the Expo itself.
So keeping in mind, we were very lucky to do Tokyo in 23 because Japan had only reopened after the pandemic, I think maybe at the most 6 weeks prior to that. So we'd wear masks everywhere. That's got to be up there as one of the most diabolical expos, and I love a good expo. So I was lucky because I picked up my bib to a different queue in which Tara and Tim did. So So my friend, we had our bibs within 5 minutes, but I remember Tara and Tim were still in that queue for over an hour. And at that point, Dean and I, we'd gone into another queue to pick up a t-shirt. It was just queue after queue after queue after queue. I think we were in the ASICS queue. It was a good 3.5 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because we were not giving, we didn't have anything else to do that day. And it's like, we're in here. My friends left. They're like, we can't be in this queue anymore. And we're like, we're here now. Let's just stick it out. And then by the time we got there, there was barely anything available. It was literally getting anything you could get. So it was an absolute shambles, I thought. But still, everyone was in queue. No one was getting angry. You just had to you either sucked it up or you left. So it was still very well organised, but a shambles at the same time, if that makes sense.
And that's very unusual for the Japanese because they're very orderly people. So when you're walking around town or if you're walking anywhere, you stick to the left-hand side and you make sure you stay single file on the escalators and stuff like that so that people can walk beside you if you're going up an escalator. So they're very, very orderly people. So there is queues everywhere, as Lucia said. Everything, because it is such a large city, everything flows very, very well for so many people. So it was very, not confronting, but a little bit bizarre for a Japanese way of doing things for it to be in such a shambles, because it really was, it was chaos, wasn't it, is the nicest way to put it for the Expo. So I do recommend to everybody, and I think even Tony found this, and I'll let him confirm, but, I don't think it was just the fact that it was because of the pandemic. I think it might be just the Expo itself. It seems to be a bit chaotic in general. Are you right there, Tony? Or
2024, they certainly didn't learn any of the lessons from 2023, if in fact they wanted to learn the lessons from 2023. I get a sense this year's a little bit closer to what maybe pre-pandemic the marathon was like. There's already reports that merch is available in ASIC stores around Tokyo, so maybe they're going to have a little bit more. But picking up the bib was the easy bit at the Expo, but if we wanted to purchase anything, by the time we got there, the shelves were just empty. There was nothing left, and it was just really poor. And very weird, very strange. And I get this whole concept that they lost money during the pandemic and et cetera, but the reality is that when you've got 30-odd thousand people running a major, you probably need more than 100 jackets. So just a little bit of a tip, and this is from a man who's been in retail for most of his life. So I just thought it was disappointing, the Expo. If there was one sour point for me in Tokyo, it was the Expo. It was, outside of going there to get my bib, it was a pointless exercise going.
So you guys, when you're talking about no stock, you're talking specifically about the ASIC store. So from what I remember of the Expo, it was held on 2 levels of a convention center, and it had lots of merchandise, lots of different exhibitors exhibiting various goods. Some of it I knew the products, and some of it I had no idea what the products were because it was in Japanese. But they had things from toilets, from what I remember. They had general other merchandise there, selling socks and shoes and hats and clothing and things like that, but not the ASIC stuff. And I found that the other stores had pretty good coverage of most of that, but it was Japanese. You couldn't see it. I didn't know many of the brands, so I wasn't familiar with it. I wasn't buying it, but it was interesting for me to see all those other brands and see all those other products there. The good thing was there was no hair and makeup people there, and there was no roofing companies that I saw that we've seen in the American ones. So that's a positive. Yeah. But I think if you look at it as an Expo as a whole, forget about the ASIC store and maybe the check-in to get your bibs. The rest of the Expo I thought was still okay. It was still like a normal Expo. It's just brands that we weren't familiar with.
In saying that though, Tim, a lot of us, not that I care about the freebies, there was no freebies that were being handed out. And I don't really care about that. But there was no samples of the drink on course or anything like that. And yes, there was lots of exhibitors that were selling products. However, there was a Tokyo store downstairs as well that had your little teddy bears and stuff and your cups and all of that sort of stuff. A lot of that stuff had actually sold out as well by the time we'd got downstairs. So even just the general merchandise for Tokyo Marathon, not just the ASICS store stuff, but the general, bag tags and all that sort of stuff had actually already sold out as well. But yes, the general merchandise from your exhibitors, yes, you could purchase that. There was very limited of the other stuff though.
Yep. All right. So getting on to the course itself, the course itself is 42.2 kilometres, 26.2 miles, as they all are. It starts in the centre of Tokyo, essentially, which is where the government building is. It's where the main operations for Tokyo take place. It's in a part of Tokyo called Shinjuku. It starts there, easy to access. Pretty much all the trains in Tokyo will end up going through Shinjuku Station. It's like the central station for Tokyo. It's the world's busiest train station, but from Shinjuku Station, it's probably a 5-minute walk to the start line. So it's a good location for a start. It's accessible for most people staying in the city. You start at Shinjuku, you then move your way down through Shinjuku down towards Akihabara, which is a area there which is full of electric games and computer games. So you'll see buildings with Sega signs on them and Nintendo signs and all sorts of things like that. And I think one of you guys alluded to it, I think Tara, before, about the out and backs. In Asukaza, in Akihabara, is where you'll have your first out and back. From Akihabara, you then make your way across to Asukaza, or Asakusa, as some people call it. And in there, you'll see some traditional temples, Buddhist temples that have been around for a long time, and Shinto temples. From there, you'll then start a series of out and backs, which forms part of a big sort of section where you go out and back 3 or 4 times. So it's a good opportunity to see others on the course. Great when you're with somebody like Travelling Fit, because everyone's wearing their Travelling Fit singlets. They stand out. You push each other along on the course. The good thing is you then come back after you've done all those out and backs. You come back into more central Tokyo, and you come through Ginza, which is their high-end retail area. You sit there and you're walking through and traveling through super luxury areas. From there, you come past the exit to the finish line, which is 1 kilometre to the finish line. But at that point, you still have 10 kilometres to go. And this is probably the last, well, it is the last out and back section, but it's probably the most difficult one that plays on your mind. You're running from sort of 32 Ks to 37 Ks before you then turn around and come back, before you then hit that final last kilometre, which is along cobblestones, before you finish in front of the Imperial Palace there in Tokyo, which is right next to Tokyo Central train station. So really well run, well organized course. There's plenty of food and drink along the way. The fuel, I've forgotten the name. What's the name of the fuel that they have? Pocari Sweat. That's the one. Yeah. Pocari Sweat. Really, it's a grapefruit flavored drink. I actually didn't mind it, and I know Tara, you didn't mind it as well. But yeah, great drink, great fuel. It's on there regularly. The drink stations are very clearly labelled. You're meant to follow the rules. On your bib is a number from 1 to 9. It correlates to a table number 1 to 9. That's where you go to get your water or your hydration. Do you think anyone follows that out on course? No, they all stop in at the first table. There's a massive crowd. So my advice to people is hold off on the first or the second or the third table for the water, because there's 9 tables, or there was when we went through it, of water. So go to a table later on. It's less crowded. You can duck in, grab your water, you can grab your hydration, and then move on. So yeah, that was sort of my thoughts on it, guys. Have you got any other thoughts of the course itself and the hydration and fuel?
Yeah, I found the jelly things were weird. Sorry, Tony.
No, the food on course, it's sort of where I was heading to. So
there was some sort of custardy jelly type thing, and they handed me one, and I'm like, oh yeah, not with my stomach, thank you very much. So
yeah, the food on course is a little bit more than just the old Morton gels, which you normally get. They're things like sweet jellied azuki bean paste cream-filled rolls, doll-shaped pancakes. It's just Tokyo's different, people. So if you're someone that has a really good cast iron stomach, you are going to enjoy Tokyo just for the ability to try new things. For everyone else, don't try anything new on race day.
except for Pocari Sweat, I will highly recommend the Pocari Sweat. It is the best drink out there.
Yeah, but even so, when you land in Tokyo, get yourself a bottle of Pocari Sweat so that you can actually taste it. It's everywhere. It's in every vending machine. It's not like you've got to go looking hard for it. It's everywhere. So please test before you get out there on course. It is I quite enjoyed the drink as well. Just that last out and back was, I enjoyed the out and backs because you are looking for people. Although I heard on a podcast that can waste a lot of energy when you're looking for people. I'm just thinking, no, it's fun, it's cool. So if it wastes your energy, don't go looking for people, but outside of that, look for people. Just that last one was quite challenging, and it's funny because once again we learned from your experience and you shared with that, but you don't actually realize until you've only got 32 or 31 kilometers run. So you know that there's still a lot to go. But just seeing that 1 kilometer sign just to your right as you're turning left, it plays with you. It really does. And then you're thinking, okay, well, I'm close. No, you're not.
No.
You are not close.
It's like going past the Gold Coast finish line as you at the 30K mark, isn't it? It's a bit of a mind. Yeah.
You got to change the mindset. The mindset has to be at that point, it's a park run out and it's a park run back. And I think we use that philosophy, Tara, because we realized that we had an out and back to go. And we realized, like, okay, from here, it's a park run to the turnaround. From there, it's a park run back to the finish.
Yeah.
We've got this. And just work your way through each park run at that point.
I was running
with
a very wounded lady at this particular moment in time. So if I was to have told her it's just a park run to go, I'm pretty certain that there might have been some things shoved in places that shouldn't have been shoved. So,
yeah.
Well,
but anyway.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think for me, the out and back actually helped me because I remember seeing you guys at one point and Tara screamed my name out. I run over because the thing that I was worried about, as I've said before, was the cutoffs. And Tim had actually done a piece of paper for me at each checkpoint, what time I had to be there to make sure that I was safe. And I actually had that laminated in my pocket and then at each checkpoint it would come out and I always had a good buffer. It was one of those races that I did not contemplate going to the toilet because I was not adding on extra meters because some of the toilets were like 100 meters down the road. I'm like, nah, not happening. So that was one thing. And the thing that I saw a bit, and I don't know if you guys saw it, was how the people with the ropes were there and dropped the rope. So like if you were 1 second over that cutoff point, the rope got dropped and you weren't going any further. So that'd be one thing that I'd say to the guys, if there's anyone listening doing Tokyo, if you are a back of the packer, just have your plan clearly outlined as to what times you need to be at what checkpoints and stick to it. And don't worry about what you see, just focus on your plan.
100%.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Lucia. I mean, I stopped to go to the toilet, and the toilets that they have on course, they do have a few portaloos, but not very many. Most of the toilets that they have on course are actually just public toilets, and some of them you have to go quite a way off course, and some of them have only got 2 cubicles or something, or 1 cubicle. So you're in the line for a while, and one of the lines that we were waiting for about 20 minutes to go to the toilet. And now I knew I had a fair chunk of time up my sleeve, so I was okay with that. But if you are a back of the packer, just be aware that the toilet line queues can be a while, and you have to go off course to get to them a lot of the time as well. So, but in saying that, there was a person that was pulled off course last year for actually having a toilet accident, and the Tokyo people do not approve of that in any way. The Japanese are very, very clean people. So if you've had an accident in your pants, they will pull you off course. So is it worth waiting and going to the toilet, or is it you're going to get disqualified anyway? Do you know what I mean? You've got to weigh up those pros and cons.
Yeah, they are very strict on those sorts of things. And going to toilet in a public place is a no-no as well. So, finding some bushes and hiding behind them and going publicly, they're not a big fan of that either. So it is something to be mindful of. I guess the other thing for me, which I failed to mention, they have a biofreeze type product there. I can't remember the name of it, but I remember seeing signs for it along the way. And then there was a section of the course where you ran off like a biofreeze zone, like they have in Chicago and New York, or wherever it is. And you could get sprayed or put this product on you. I didn't try it, but for those of our listeners, there is something like that. I don't know what the product is. I can't remember it, but it is a well-known product that they have over there. And a lot of runners were taking that option, I guess, along the way.
Sharon utilized that at every opportunity she could. I think she even accosted some guy in the crowd who just happened to have a can of it. So yeah.
Did it work for her?
No, but
not like biofreeze.
I think Sharon's cramping was too far gone. So yeah, I think there's an opportunity while it's early to be able to get some relief from something like that. But by the time she started seeking relief, it was too far gone. But
they do also. Oh, sorry, Tim. Yep.
No, you go. You go.
I was just going to say they do have a very strict rule with just what I was saying about them being very clean. They have a very strict rule about disposing of your wrappers and stuff like that. So if you do have gels and stuff like that, please do not throw them on the road. Do not throw your cups anywhere that they should not be. You can get disqualified for that as well. So hold on to your wrappers, any rubbish that you have, and dispose of them at the hydration station. Do not dispose of them on the road, because that is a cause of, or it could be a contender for a disqualification of that course as well.
Yeah. And just to alleviate some fears with that, I mean, when we ran it, there were big receptacles. It's not like you go out of your way. You have to go look for these things. They are huge. And then if you happen to miss that, you normally then have a series of volunteers on the same side as the drink station holding big plastic bags for you to put it in. So a lot of people are thinking, what am I going to do? Carry it? No, you have ample opportunity because it's provided for you to put your wrappers in places. Yeah.
Yep. All right. We've also mentioned the cutoffs. I know the cutoffs are one of the biggest contentious issues. I know, Tony, you've done a whole out and back episode around the cutoffs and how you train for them. But it is, I guess, a mindful thing that the total cutoff time is 7 hours, but it isn't actually 7 hours. It's 7 hours from when the gun goes, right? But depending on which corral you start in, and the great thing with Tokyo is it is a continuous wave of runners. So corral A goes to corral B very quickly. There's no gaps. Corral C butts up into corral B, etc., and you just keep going through. So the real time for most back of the packers is probably close to about 6 hours 30. I know, Tony, you were in K Corral last year and you went through in about 28 minutes or so past the hour.
But 9:30 we crossed the start line. So the gun goes off at 10 past 9 and we went across that start line at 9:30. So so when we were looking at the cutoffs, for example, we worked on that worst case scenario of 9:40, which is what we thought. If we were unlucky at the start, so automatically when we crossed at 9:30, I'm sort of going, phew, I've already got 10 minutes up my sleeve. So
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of strategies, and we can talk about them in the corrals. Obviously, if you are concerned about them, get to the corrals early and get your way to the front of those corrals as quickly as you can or as best you can. It may mean that you're standing around for an hour and a half before the gun goes, but if you can give yourself 4 or 5 minutes or 3 or 4 minutes extra by standing a little bit further up in your corral, then definitely do it. I think the biggest cutoffs that everyone gets worried about are the first and the second cutoffs at 4.9 kilometers and 11.3 kilometers. But there's another one. I think it's around about 37.8 kilometers that people start to get worried about as well. I think, Tony, is that the one, or is it the 33.5?
the 33.5. So the two,
33.5.
yeah. A lot of people really worry about that 11.3. It is this year. It used to be 11.1. So, but you've got to be past that at 11:10. So from gun time, that gives you 2 hours. But if you're a back of the packer coming through the start line at 9:40, say, that gives you an hour and a half to do those 11.1 kilometers. So that's in the back of a lot of people's minds. But that 33.5 can be a killer, especially if you're just ticking over the cutoffs and you're just sort of like a minute or two in front of it. Because at 29.2, you've got to be there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you just make that, you've got to be at 33.5 at 25 to 5. So that gives you 35 minutes to fundamentally run, almost 5Ks. And for a back of the packer at that time of the race, you're probably thinking, oh my God. But yeah, I get surprised how many people get caught up or swept at the 37.8, to be honest. So as well, but the two ones that I was worried about, and Luch, I don't know if it was similar to you, the 11.3 and the 33.5. I knew that if I made both of those, we were going to be laughing.
I was worried at every single one. Like, even though I still had time, but I do agree with you. The first one was probably a bit of a concern. So my training for Tokyo was based on the cutoffs and making sure I can make those distances of the cutoffs in the training, and I think that helped. I didn't get the time I wanted, but that's another story. But yeah, I was worried about every single cutoff. Probably Tokyo would be the only marathon I've done where I did not take a single picture the whole race because I didn't want to waste time. Because for me, every second counted.
Yeah.
So I should feel privileged that when I ran across the road to you and you gave me a hug, I should feel very privileged that you took that time for me then, Lucia.
Oh, mate, that was happening regardless.
Yeah. But yeah, Tim, you
Tara,
talked about... Sorry.
The cutoffs for you, Tara, any concerns?
No. When I stopped at the toilet for about 20 minutes, I'm sitting there going, I hope I'm going to be all right here. But I think because I was a lot fitter back then and probably a lot, a lot more cocky with my racing as well, where I hadn't really had too many bad races, not like Boston, where I sort of threw my confidence. So I sort of just put my trust in you, Tim, and knew you'd get me there, if that makes any sense. So, no, I didn't have any concerns, and I don't want to sound cocky there, but, yeah, I probably was, and that's because I hadn't had a race where I had been like I was in Boston, where I was like so finally at the cut. Yeah.
And Tony, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I think from the start strategy point of view, what you said was really relevant. Getting there early, getting to the front of the corrals. I was in the OK Corral, which is what we've come to call the K Corral. We're going to be okay. And but we didn't get there early. And one of the risks that you take if you're not there early, I think when you guys, I was talking to you about the Tokyo Marathon, you're in your corral for about an hour. I don't think we were there at all that long. We were there for about half an hour. But where we were in K Corral, it's really weird because the corral in front of you is the G Corral, and then to your right, you've got a street that feeds into it. And I think that was the J Corral, right? So it's the one before K anyway. So here we were thinking, oh my God, the K Corral was already chockers or already full, and they filled from the back of the corrals. So there was a block of toilets between G and K. And so we scooted across, lined up there. And when you come out of the toilets, it then fed straight into the front of the K Corral. So we were quite lucky that had happened. But there's a little tip for anyone if they're in the K Corral. It also gave us the thought maybe we could sneak into G Corral, which we probably could have. But one of the rules in the rule book says if you are found in the wrong corral, you are disqualified. So we weren't going to test that theory. So we just we were very lucky. We're about 5 rows back at the start of K Corral. And then once they start moving, you just keep moving. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you've mentioned the handbook, the all-important handbook. It's one that every runner has to read. You cannot not read it. It has rules for everything in there, and it is an absolute must that every runner reads that and understands the rules. In there is all the etiquette stuff, but a whole heap of other stuff. I know, Tony, you've been looking at it recently and have put some pics up there. What are your thoughts on the rule book and some of the items and things you can and can't do?
Yeah, I think a lot of people worry about when they read this rule book, especially some of the American runners get really concerned that everything's constricted. You can't do this, you can't do that. And yeah, it says you can't do this and you can't do that. So if it says don't bring water bottles in, you don't bring water bottles in. It becomes a really simple thing. You just say, okay, that's the rules, I'll run with it. That being said, I was really worried about pickle juice because I ran with 4 little things of pickle juice, but I put them in my pockets and I got through no worries because they are only tiny. So it's not like they were standing out. But things like no canteens, no water bottles, no plastic bottles, no cans, or any such containers are allowed. And adhere to that because there were a lot of people getting stopped when you're coming into the gates there in the start area, and they were just putting it over. Things like the manners scenario, it's, a lot of people have a bit of a giggle about this, but, at the end of the day, they're there to help us all have an enjoyable thing. So do not throw away any garments at the start. Do not take your trash with you. Those are sort of the rules as you go. Japan's Minor Offence Act forbids people from relieving themselves in public. So please adhere to that. Tara was saying about the person that soiled themselves during the run, and they were, apart from being incredibly embarrassed, were disqualified. And that, that's a shame, but, that's the rules. The one that is intriguing, it says, do not pass others right after the start of the race. And people will look at that and they'll think, okay. In my experience, we couldn't pass anyone anyway. The race is one of the crowded races. We were always around people, right? And it really didn't thin out a great deal. Towards the end of it did, but those first 5Ks, and I'm sure the experience was the same, you are just shoulder to shoulder with people running. So just be really, really mindful of that. It is the rule, do not pass others right after the start. So you've got to be patient. You've just got to be patient, and you'll find that you can't.
Yeah, it is quite twisty, those first couple of kilometres. You are going up and down a couple of blocks there and twisting around. And whilst the roads are wide, you're right, there's so many people there. You got 42.2 kilometres. You don't need to pass everybody in the first kilometre. Ease into it, take your time, and just go with the flow and let the wave of people just push you along. Deal with the people in front of you later.
In saying that as well, if you do pass people when you run up on the median strips or through garden beds, you can get disqualified for that as well. So just be aware. don't run through the garden beds, don't run on the grass, don't run anywhere that you shouldn't, because if you're trying to pass people because they're too slow, you're just going to have to wait. Unfortunately, you do run on the garden beds or something like that, you will get disqualified if you get caught.
Absolutely. And just the other thing, the final thing on the handbook is that it's probably the only runner's handbook that's going to tell you what to do in case of seismic activity or volcano or earthquake. And once again, a lot of people get quite fearful. I think there's also maybe a reference to missiles. I don't know. I couldn't see it in this year's handbook, but they do talk about seismic activity. So you get the go-ahead for the race. I think the final no-go thing is like the day before, correct? And
Correct.
then as part of your instructions, you are advised what to do in case of an earthquake. So once again, that's Japan. And as we know, there's histories of tsunamis and all this sort of stuff. So please don't look at that with, geez, that's weird. Yeah, okay, it's weird, but please take heed of it, because you've got more chance of an earthquake happening in Tokyo than what you would in Chicago. So
Yeah. And at the end of the day, all those rules are there to make it an enjoyable experience for everyone. The rules are not over the top. They sound like they are, but at the end of the day, it's about being respectful to the country you're in and being respectful to the other runners around you and the members of the public that are supporting you. So, don't throw your rubbish on the ground, put it in the bin. That's what adult people do anyway. So why not do it there? Don't bring all your other stuff onto the course. Okay. So what? You might be used to having a particular brand of hydration as you enter in and before you start the race. Well, you can't on this one. Tough luck. Move on. Deal with it. It will still be an enjoyable race. You'll still get it done.
And there is lots of water stations that you're not going to miss out on water. So if you are used to running with a pack, you're not going to actually miss running with your pack or your vest, because there is so many water stations, and they're not like Boston where they're packing it up, halfway through the race. They will it's continuously topped up and filled. Like every single one of those things, they don't run out. They're very, very meticulous.
Yep, 100%. All right, thanks, guys. We're going to wrap it up there because I know we're starting to run out of time. So before we finish up, we normally get a tip from me, but as I'm host tonight, I'm going to pass it over to Lucia for Lucia's tip of the week.
Well, thank you. So this week's tip of the week is getting the basics right, because sometimes I think it's good for everyone that's either starting out or people even returning from injury, about focusing on the basics. Because one thing one of my leaders said to me years ago, if you get the basics right, everything else will follow. So just a couple basics that I want to go over. Start slow, especially if you're new to running, or even if you're coming back from an injury. Start off by running at a comfortable pace and just slowly increase your speed and distance. Don't go too hard too soon. And something we have spoken about a few times is strength training. So running is very hard on your legs. So strengthening your muscles through exercises like squats, lunges, and core work can certainly improve your form, but also importantly, it can also reduce the risk of injury. And changing up your route. So, because sometimes I'm like, this is one that I don't focus on too much. Sometimes I did on the weekend. I did do a different route. Change your route sometimes, because if you do the same one every time you go running, you're going to get bored. So don't be afraid to explore new paths, trails, or parks, just to keep things exciting, and to also challenge a different set of muscles. And this one, something that may seem silly, but it's something that everyone should think about as well. Use proper footwear for the terrain that you're running on. So, for instance, if you're running on trails, opt for a pair of trail shoes, as they will have more grip. Don't wear a pair of carbon plated shoes on trails, because you're just going to wreck the shoes and it's not going to be good for you. And same if you're running on the road, wear a pair of road running shoes and not necessarily trail shoes. So just a couple of the basics to get our listeners thinking about. So that's it from me.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Lucia. this episode is about to end, but before we do that, Tara, what is happening next week on the show?
So next week is probably one more for Lucia and I to be talking about. I mean, obviously, you boys are more than welcome to chime in as much as you would like. But we're going to be talking about women's running. And now with the women's running, it's more than just lacing up the road and lacing up your shoes and hitting the road. It's got a few unique challenges that the males don't have to worry about. So we've got things like menstrual cycles, we've got perimenopause, menopause, also things like osteoarthritis. Obviously, running is going to prevent that, but we've got things that go on in our body a little bit differently to men. So postpartum recovery, safety concerns, fueling even is different for males and females. So there's a lot women need to know about but don't actually talk about. So it's going to be a bit of a free-for-all. Nothing's off topic for next week for females. So if it's not something that you want to listen to as a male, then we won't be too concerned, but it is going to be a female one. But if you are a male and you want to listen, it's probably a really good idea if you've got a female runner in your household so you can understand why they run at different times, like why they run differently at different times of the month and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, the more we share, the longer we run.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Tara. I'm pretty sure I won't be able to contribute too much, but I'll definitely be there and supporting you and Lucia along the way. So, all right. So thanks, everyone. That concludes the show for the week. And as always, I'd love to thank you, our co-hosts, my co-hosts, I guess, for joining us tonight. Thank you, guys. For everyone running the Tokyo Marathon in the next week or so, or in the future, we wish you all the very best of luck. We already know a number of our listeners listen to this and are doing Tokyo, and I know particularly Brian and Monica, our friends that are listening to the podcast, will be in Tokyo and will be running. So good luck, guys. We can't wait to hear about all your experiences when you get back. We just hope everyone gets through it safely, everyone gets their goals, and gets that nice big shiny medal at the end of it. Probably not so big shiny medal that you get in Tokyo, but anyway, it's a nice medal. So just a tip, you can still get the Flying Runr in Japan. We still work. Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all those things still work in Japan, so you can still listen to us. We love making these podcasts for you. Your feedback means the world to us, so please like, comment, or message us on Instagram, Facebook, or Messenger, or email us at happyrunning@flyingrunner.com. And if you've got any tips, we'd love to hear them. So please speak up. Let us know. You can watch this episode on Spotify and YouTube, or listen via Amazon, Apple, and all major podcast platforms. Remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll see you next time on the Flying Runr. Domo arigato gozaimasu. Happy running.
Happy running.
Happy running.